Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again are my co-hosts, Richie O'Leary and Alec Crouthamel. Guys, we're going to talk about everything Greg Schiano had to say in his game week presser for the Illinois game. We're going to talk about what happened around the Big Ten this past weekend, and then give a little bit of a discussion on what we think the best job openings are and why right now in college football. But before we get into any of that, this podcast is presented to you once again by FanDuel. The line right now is Rutgers as an 12.5 point underdog, over under of 62.5. That is up from 11.5, which is what it opened at, and I believe 59.5. So another high scoring game expected in this one. And as the week goes on, hopefully you'll feel a little bit more confident one way or the other about where you should maybe put your money on the upcoming matchup on FanDuel. Let's get into what Schiano had to say at his presser today. We're going to play the presser and then kind of give our takes on what he said. But I'll share that with you guys now, and then we'll talk about it after.
Guys, thanks for coming out, and thanks for working with us here on this change of venue, change of day. This is going to be what it'll be for a little bit. But just got off the field, good practice, guys, very focused. I think they know exactly what we're walking into, a very, very good Illinois team. I saw they announced the sellout, so it'll be a great environment, a great challenge. You look, I think offensively their quarterback is a special player, right? I mean, we saw him last year. He can make every throw, his arm, he can do it from every arm angle. He's athletic. He extends plays. He creates plays. He really is a fine quarterback, an experienced quarterback, that doesn't make many mistakes. They have a very good running back room. Number 3 is, 255 pounds. 5 and 21 are really good backs. So they have 3 really good backs. Their O-line is experienced, very experienced, nasty. And then the receiving core, 80's really burst onto the scene now. I mean, he's something. But they have a group of receivers that, they have a really good mix, very much like ours. They have big guys, they have quick guys, they have fast guys, they have everything. So I think there's a reason that athletically and numerically the numbers they have offensively, it's not by accident. They're very, very talented. Defensively, the 17 coming off the edge, he gave us problems. He's kind of a game wrecker. Their linebacker is a very good player. I think it's 28. Am I right? 28? I think it's 28. Yeah. He is really, really athletic. And, I mean, he's got something like 9 or 10 or 12 career takeaways. I mean, he is a ball hawk. We have to be very, very secure with the football. And then the secondary, is an experienced group. So I think that, they've had some injuries back there, but they still have some guys that have played a lot of football. So, we're going to have to really be on point in every area of the game, because special teams, they create issues as well. So it's definitely a challenge, one that I know our team's excited about. That's why you play in the Big Ten, to go play in games like this, and we're looking forward to it. So with that, I'll open it up.
We can get to ask you this after the game, and I know you don't like talking about injuries, but Al-Shadi and Taj seem to really get dinged up really bad. Like, what are the odds of them coming back at this point of the season with 4 games left?
Yeah, you're right. I'm not going to talk about injuries. It'll be the availability report, but the thing, you guys get the availability report, and as I do. We had 22 guys that ended up being out of the game. Can you imagine if the 105 rule was in effect? I hope that we amend that rule, because it'd be hard to practice college football. People always say, well, the NFL does it with, well, first of all, the NFL, they are the best players on the planet. They don't need to be developed. We get guys that are high school football players that have to be developed, especially in a place like ours. We have a developmental program. So how do you practice when you can't run, 2 fields at the same time and practice productively? So we are at the verge of not being able to do that right now with the injuries we've had. And some of them are starters. Actually, quite a few are, but a lot of them are depth players. Where does that affect you? It affects you in the kicking game. I get frustrated with our kickoff coverage sometimes, but
introducing proper cloth.
A lot of those guys that should be on that kickoff coverage are out, and that's not what gets thought of or talked about. So we have to find a way, and I think Eddie Allen, Jake Barr, they do a great job with our special teams, and they're working their tail off. We have to be special with our specialists. We have to be able to do those things. So huge challenge, but looking forward to it.
You mentioned after the game on Saturday some of the changes in roles and among the coaching staff for the defense. There's still some of the issues with guys out of position, things like that. I guess how are you and the staff remedying that this week against a really good offense?
Just continuing to work at it. There's no magic pill just because you change responsibilities or you change. We have to do a better job of violently communicating with each other. There's a couple situations we have to coach better, right? We have to get them to do it. That's your job as a coach. Like, I never look at it when a player doesn't perform. I never look at it as the player. I look at it as the coach. And I'm one of those coaches, so I look at it as myself. I mean, we recruited them, we developed them. So if they're not getting it done, it's on us. And we got to find a way to get it done. And whether you change personnel, whether you change the way you do it, whether you change the way you teach it, the way you say it, you better figure it out, because there's no waiver wire. You're not going to get somebody for the last 4 weeks. You're playing with who you brought here, and you got to coach the heck out of them and get them to do it the way you want. So that's what we need to do on defense. We need to do that on all three phases, actually.
Kind of going hand in hand with that, the defense played a lot better this week, especially the last three quarters, but there were some still misalignments and pre-snaps. Do you blame that more on coaching? Is it more of players just not understanding the changes, or?
Probably a little bit of everything. It's like I say to them, we're all in this together, guys. There's no us and you or you and us. It's all of us. We win together, we lose together. ODK, all together, right? And when you're having struggles, you don't get there overnight. Right? We've played really good defense over the years, and we've played not so good defense over the years. We've played them both. How do you get there? You don't get there overnight. How do you get out of there? You don't get out of there overnight. All I'm looking for is incremental improvement. Can we get a little bit better? Today we got a little bit better, so I'm pleased. Right? Saturday we got a little bit better from the previous game. I'm pleased. We just got to keep getting better. Would I like to get better this much instead of this much? Yeah. But, as I always say to the team, there's another team on the other sideline that wants exactly what you want. They want to win the game. Something got to give, right? So we got to be better at making it give our way.
Just touching on the injury situation, defensive back, wide receiver, even offensive tackle, how difficult is it logistically for you just to be able to get through the practices? I know you want to develop the guys, but to be able to give a good look and everything you kind of need to do in game week.
That's a great question. It's very hard. And what sacrifices is the developmental portion of it, right? I mean, you said even the offensive tackles. I don't think people realize how many offensive tackles we've lost this year. I mean, we are, I don't know if it's 4 or 5, how many do you actually have on your team? So, yeah, to practice, what I love to do is when we're done with our game prep practice, we always, on Tuesday and Wednesday, we always do developmental. So we do developmental team anywhere from 10 to 20 plays every Tuesday, every Wednesday, every Sunday. So, like, these guys play an entire game over the course of a week. And if you take that out over the whole year, they really do improve quite a bit. There's a lot of programs where once the season starts, those guys don't get any reps at their offense or defense. All they do is mimic the other team on the scout team. We've had to stop doing that because we can't risk the injury. If we have an injury in our developmental period at the end of practice, then we won't have enough guys to run the scout team. So that's where you get it. It's a lag effect. It'll have a lag effect moving forward because we're no longer able to develop them in our offense, defense, and kicking game. Now, we've done some. I'm not saying we cut it out totally, but we've had to lessen it, and that I don't like, because I truly believe. And, it's hard as a coach. You get into this part of the season and you want to get in and watch the tape because you're tired. And eventually, there's only so many hours in the day. But those developmental periods to me are everything. And you got, as a coach, you got to suck, because we let the guys go that are playing in the game, and then it's just the developmental guys out there and the coaches. And, it's an extra 10, 15 minutes, but that's the difference going to bed at midnight or going to bed at, 12:15. Every minute counts at this stage of the year. So I appreciate that our coaches always are willing to sacrifice for the development of the guys, and I appreciate the players that do a hard job on scout team. And then after we break it down, they go and take another 10, 15, 20 plays to get better. So that's being sacrificed now, which I hate.
looking at the bigger picture, you talked about your admiration for Kirk Ferentz, what he's built at Iowa. Is there a similar feeling for Brett Bielema, what he's been able to do for consistent output now at 2 Big Ten schools?
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Brett. We go way back, and he's a darn good football coach, and a great husband, great father, all the things that are good for a program. And I have a lot of respect for their whole staff. They're really good football coaches, and that's why I love this league. You don't see anybody in this league that aren't good coaches. The entire staff, everybody's a good coach. So it's great competition. If you're a competitor, that's what you live for, to go against other really talented groups and see how you match up. And as I said earlier, the beauty of competition is the guy on the other side, they want the exact same thing you want.
FanDuel's dropping profit boosts every college football Saturday. So how do we...
Might want to let that one go.
That's what's fun.
Touching back on the injuries, it's 2 years in a row that these things have really piled up. Why? From what you've seen, why does this keep happening to this program the last 2 years?
I could make stabs at it. I let the sports science people help me with that. I think we've made changes that are going to show positive effects, but I don't think everything in life has a lag time, and I think we will get better. It's unfortunate though, 2 years in a row. You're right to have the level of injuries we have, but you know what? Nobody cares. As I always tell everybody, if you're looking for somebody to feel sorry for, you're in the wrong place, including me. I don't feel sorry for it. That's the way it is. And I don't talk about it very much at all because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. You got to go play with who you got, and that's what I've done my whole career. So we'll just keep doing that. All right, guys, thank you for coming out. Oh, that wasn't the last one? Oh, 2 more. Oh, my goodness. Wait a minute. Didn't you say 2 more ago? All right. Go ahead, Richie.
Everyone talks about the defensive changes and personnel changes and all that other stuff, but there were some offensive changes this week, so a lot more gap scheme runs. Do you kind of foresee that being a thing going forward, or is that just more based on what you saw on the opposite side of the field?
Yeah, every week, the coaches come up with a plan. That's what, we do a lot of advanced work, and then you come in on Sunday, you put that game to bed, and then it's on to the next opponent. And you try to look at it and say, what is there that we're doing that can be beneficial? And if there's something we're not doing, maybe we can do that if it fits. So we have done a couple different things at this point of the year, and we'll continue to search. But I think one of the things that we generally do a good job of is sticking to what we know and what we do well, and not getting too out there on the fringe, because every rep that you do with something new or something that may be in vogue takes away from a rep of perfecting your technique and your execution. And that's what we do. Whether there's other ways to do it, certainly there is. We believe in execution, and that's what we're going to do. So there may be a couple wrinkles here and there, but nothing that I think will be earth-shattering. We're not going to the triple or anything like that. Okay? Thanks, guys. Wait a minute. There's one more even? Oh, my goodness, Jimmy, you're killing me here. All right, I got you. Maybe I'm not into like press conference mode. I'm more into post-practice. That's my fault. I apologize.
All right. I know you talked a little bit about it after the game, but the emotion you showed on the field. I know a lot of people have said gut check game for Rutgers and everything else. Why so much for you pounding the fist on the turf?
Well, there's a lot that goes on. If you can imagine being responsible for 250 people, right? So 250 people all have issues, and I'm not going to get into everybody's issues, but when you love those people like we do in our program, you feel their pain, right? You feel their pain when they lose people. You feel their pain. It was a really tough week around our building, as well as having lost 4 straight games. I think that was exhaustion and probably really just so happy for the people that have been paying a price and not getting a return on their investment. Just to have them have a little investment, it was a good feeling. And look, I know, my faith, I believe that, there's no coincidences. And I was real thankful that we were able to come away with the W, but that's in the past. And everything, as I told the players, we get to celebrate that. And we did. We had fun. But then Sunday we got on the mistakes, got them corrected, and quickly got on to Illinois, and that's where we are now. So I look forward to it. And, again, I appreciate you covering us, and I'm kidding around, obviously. Anything you need, Jimmy, we'll do. Again, you guys do a great job. And when I see guys travel all across the country to come cover us, I really do appreciate that. I know that's there's other ways you could do it, and you choose to do it that way. So it means a lot. Thanks, guys.
So there's Greg Schiano at the podium today. Talked a lot about injuries. It's funny because he's like made it a point after last season to say, I didn't mention it during the season, but we were dealing with a lot of injuries, and he says he doesn't like to talk about it in season, but he talked about it a lot today, just about the minutia of like not being able to practice the way he wants to, not being able to develop guys because those developmental periods can bring too much risk attached to it that a guy might get hurt and then they might not be able to conduct a regular practice in the way that they want. That really stood out to me. What stood out to you guys about what you said? You guys wrote there. Richie, how about you first?
That's all I kept hearing, like halfway through the press conference.
Banging the table.
Yeah, like you hear it in the video a little bit, and I'm like, geez, man, like someone's got to stop him. Like he just keeps hitting it every time he talks. But I think my favorite part was, and I didn't, this got brought up to me via text. I didn't even realize it because we were in the moment, like talking to him. Alec's question, he answered, he's like, yeah, just because you change responsibility, just because you change and just stopped. And it was like, whoa, change responsibilities. Oh, you teased something a little bit there. But
I thought it was a team effort.
Yeah, that's what I was told. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear that like he's calling the defense. But other than that,
I also thought to go along with that, I thought it was a good callback by him. I don't know, intentional or not, that he came into the presser with his Raiders on.
Yeah, the cheaters.
Maybe it was intentional but unintentional. He's calling the defense, but he forgot to take him off before he walked in.
Yeah, it. Other than that, I didn't really like. There's not a whole lot to take away. It is what it is. I actually kind of thought Alec's question was a little bit of a dig at him. Like, do you look up to Brett Bielema the way you look at like a legend like Ferentz?
That wasn't even my intention. I was trying to get something.
I was like, yeah.
I was trying to get something about the other team because there's a lot of similarities between the two with their style and what they've built in the Big Ten.
It was just funny. It was like
that is kind of funny if
this one and this one.
If he took it that way, that would be kind of funny.
Yeah, I thought that was no. I don't think he did either. There was something else too. I can't remember. Yeah, if I think of it, I'll go back to it. But there really wasn't like a whole lot to take away from this press conference. It's kind of very boring. Oh, yeah, he said he knew Bielema for a long time, and I'm sure he did. But I forgot they worked together technically for 3 months with the Patriots before Greg like retired or whatever he did in those retired. And then everyone started those rumors. He's retiring because he's coming back. And he ended up coming back later this year. So maybe it was true.
How about you, Alec? What stood out to you about the presser?
Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot. I guess I was surprised by the amount of injury talk, but I thought he did give some good insight on how, you really run things when it comes to like the development, things like that with practices and stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised if there were 2 more players added to the out for season portion of the availability report in Al-Shadi Salam and Taj White because only 4 regular season games left, and both of those injuries looked pretty serious. And another one that that actually was adjusted, I think, after the availability report first came out, Michael Thomas, the freshman wide receiver, was moved to out for the season, which I don't think he was on the initial availability report. Apparently it was adjusted at some point, which is definitely a big blow because he looked very, very good in his limited playing time. And that's another thing they talked about, just the depth getting chipped away at on this team where, Ian Strong notwithstanding, some of the big stars may not be getting dinged up, but just the guys that are behind them, should something happen, like the depth and things like that, it's just getting torched right now due to injuries. Mike, you're muted. I'm sure you're saying great stuff though.
Yeah, I thought I must have double clicked it. It's funny because I was thinking to myself as I'm watching, I was like, man, I hope somebody asks like why this is the second year in a row this is happening. And Brian Fonseca did ask that, and Greg kind of gave a non-answer where he could take a stab at it. They've changed some things, and most notably, they changed their strength and conditioning coordinator, Jay Butler, the longtime Greg staffer, is no longer with the program, obviously. But it is a little bit concerning that, like you said, like if they were at the 105 limit, like it'd be a really rough spot to be in. And I don't know. I don't know if like, because 2023, we had like no injuries whatsoever. We had a couple late, but it was hardly any whatsoever. And the last two have been just from the time of camp all the way through the season has just been, it's like going to war. It's like this level of attrition. So, while you might have changed a few things in the off season, and you talked about how everything in life has a lag time. Man, I hope they get it right, because another season like this, and you really do have to kind of look at everything you do if 2026 is just as injury marred as 23 or 24 and 25, because I mean, at some point, you can't just like chalk it up to luck, because it's clearly not. Like, I remember, I'll go back in my Eagles fan hat here. There was just a stretch for like 3 or 4 years where every single year the Eagles were decimated by injuries, and they ended up like changing entire training staff, philosophies, things like that. And they've been one of the healthier organizations in the NFL ever since. But I mean, football is inherently a violent game, so there's going to be injuries every year. So I don't want to make it more than it needs to be, but to have like entire position groups like tackles like totally wiped out the same way that position groups last year were, like linebacker, like it's very discouraging and alarming. I'll say.
Yeah, I guess I would definitely look towards if the same thing happens next year, then you're really alarmed, because he did make that really big sweeping change. Someone like Jay Butler, who he's worked with for pretty much 20 years, deciding to get rid of him and replace him with Spencer Brown, who even just first joined the program for spring practices and then didn't really truly get started in his role until the summer. I think that's what he's referring to when it comes to like the lag period, things like that. I think, 365 days from now, we're having the same conversation, then the alarm bells really, really need to go off firing. I'm not saying they shouldn't be right now with the way that the things are for injury wise, but like if you're bringing in Spencer Brown, a guy who's done a lot of great things at Dartmouth, and it's still the same things are happening, then I think program wide you need to really raise some red flags. But I guess we'll have to wait and see how it works out over the next year or so until Spencer Brown like really gets a full off season to try to develop guys and hopefully avoid some of those same issues.
There is a lot of luck ones too. Like, you got to think, like Dante Chin got rolled up on, like Taj White got rolled up on. Who else? Like Moses Walker was non-contact. Famature is non-contact in spring. Like there is a lot that's just like, it just sucks and it happens. But then you also look at their injury list compared to everyone else's. It's not just out for the season. There's 12 out for the season. There's also a solid 10 that are out every game. Then there's a solid 3 or 4 that are questionable. Purdue had 6 total on their injury report this week, and I'm pretty sure Barry Odom's a pretty old school coach too. So it's like, what the fuck's going on?
I do wonder though, like, does every program who has guys they intended to redshirt that have a ding that they list for out for the year do that? Like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like,
we actually had that same conversation after the press conference among our like media circle of all the guys that were there that you heard on the presser. Like, if I forget who offered this example, but someone offered the example of it. It's like Purdue's 4th string wide receiver tears his ACL in practice. Are you going to list that as out for the season? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is like look at the difference in the availability report from this past weekend. The stark for those who are listening on Spotify, that's or just on audio only, that's 8 players out for the game for Rutgers compared to 3 for Purdue. 2 questionable compared to 1 for Purdue. That's more even. But then you got, what is that, 12, 13 players out for the season compared to 2 for Purdue. So it's stark.
Yeah. So a lot of injury talk, like you can have heard. Schiano was very complimentary of Brett Bielema and the staff at Illinois, everything they've done. This Illinois team is kind of like a luxury brand version of Rutgers. Their defense is bad. They've got an offense that can move the ball. I might even give a slight edge to Rutgers' offense. Not a very big one, but a slight one. They're very similar. I think Rutgers' receivers are better, and the running back is better. But I'd give Luke Altmaier the edge at quarterback, so it's close to being even, in my opinion. And I would say that mainly because Illinois does have at least one defensive kind of playmaker in Gabe Lucas that'll give them the slight edge there. But it's very much a look in the mirror type game, which will make how it plays out all the more interesting. Because I think while this is a game I don't expect Rutgers to win, they can win this game. Whereas I didn't feel like they had the ability to win against Washington because Washington just did the things that Rutgers struggled against too well. Obviously, Oregon was not even in the question, but we'll get into a full game preview later in the week. But was there anything else that either was an anecdote from the presser or something Schiano said that you guys wanted to highlight before we go around the Big Ten?
No, not really.
All right, perfect. So the Big Ten this past weekend had mostly a full slate. There wasn't like a whole lot of marquee matchups. Hell, there weren't even a whole lot of good games across the Big Ten this past week. I think the result that surprised me the most, and maybe there was a hint of, certain things you could point to about why this happened, but Oregon only beat Wisconsin 21-7 in a game that they were almost 35-point favorites in. And this was in Eugene as well. I'm going to pull it up here. But really surprised because Wisconsin, they lost like 37-0 at home to Iowa. They lost a whole lot to 0 to Ohio State. They put up a good fight in this one. I'll give them credit. Indiana just turned UCLA into a pumpkin. Indiana's doing that to a lot of teams. Indiana doesn't, by the way, have to play Ohio State in the regular season. So it's looking like an imperial march to the Big Ten title game in Indianapolis, which will be one crazy atmosphere. You assume that Indiana fans will swarm upon Lucas Oil Stadium. The one that I'm most interested in talking about, I'm sure you guys are too, is this Washington-Illinois game. Washington won at home 42-25. It's honestly like a pretty similar looking box score that we had against them. Did either of you guys get a chance to watch this game? And if you did, kind of what are your thoughts on it?
I saw parts of it. That's definitely on the docket for this week, is to try to rewatch as much as I can the actual game itself. But yeah, I mean, the box score looks kind of similar. I guess they were able to contain DeMond Williams a little bit more. Washington was, but also that came at the what's the word I'm looking for? The other side of it. Yeah, the expense of Jonah Coleman, I should say, getting back on track. Denzel Boston had another great game, which we'll talk about him in a little bit as well. He also threw for a touchdown. Yeah, it does seem kind of similar, at least from looking at the box score. There's been a lot of talk about how badly Illinois' defense has been struggling in recent weeks, and we'll of course get someone from Illinois this week to preview the game. But it sounds like a lot of the problems on the defense seem kind of similar to what Rutgers is dealing with.
Yeah, no, I've listened to a few Illinois podcasts following that game. A lot of talks about their defense being soft, just kind of struggling across the board. It sounds like they're a little bit better of a they're a little bit better of a run defense team than a pass defense team, which bodes well for us. If you look, they haven't really been able to get a consistent run game going on the Big Ten slate. Mm-hmm. Anytime Luke Altmaier's leading your team in rushing in a game, it's probably not the best, but their leading rusher against Power 4 teams this year, 48 yards, 18 yards, 60 yards, 95 yards, 50 yards, 48 yards. So when you haven't had a guy, you've had one guy break 60 yards all season against an FBS team, and that was against Purdue. And that was a game that you kind of had get a little out of your way late in the game. But they've allowed the FBS teams, Duke, they allowed 19 points, which if you watch that game, it was closer than the final score would indicate. They allowed 63 to Indiana, 32 to USC, 27 to Purdue, 34 to Ohio State, and 42 to Washington. Obviously, they played a tougher schedule than Rutgers so far, but their defense has not helped them out in the slightest. So So yeah, we'll get into more of that game later on after we all give it a rewatch. But obviously the most consequential one for the Scarlet Knights, given that we both just played Washington. We're about to play each other this upcoming week, so it's a good litmus test. They lost by 19 at Washington, or sorry, they lost by 17 at Washington. We lost by 19 at Washington. Looking for future opponents here. That was the only one left on the schedule. Any of these other games you guys wanted to touch on?
Yeah.
How the hell did Minnesota lose 41?
That's what I was looking at too. They got absolutely housed by Iowa.
Yeah. This was 31-0 at halftime in a game that had an over-under of 38.5.
I saw a tweet from a friend of the show, Tony Liebert, who covers Minnesota, saying that was the most unprepared half of football I have seen in my 24 years of life, which first off, he looks pretty good for 24. I say as a 24-year-old myself. Second of all, yeah, they got absolutely destroyed in this game. It just did not look like they came out with the I don't even know what there were too many things that went wrong in this game for Minnesota. But just that they didn't come out looking like prepared to play against this Iowa team. And I think they're starting to find their stride at the right time. Drake Lindsay made some bad mistakes. And apparently this is kind of a growing trend. Oh, my goodness.
Look at the average. Oh, my God.
Oh,
3.9
yards.
Drake Lindsay, for those listening on audio, had a 4.3 QBR, and that's a rating system from 0 to 100, where 50 is average. So,
yeah, Mark Gronowski had a 70.5 for reference.
Jeez. Oh, Alec, for context, you said he looks pretty good for a 24-year-old. Let's go back. He just said that this is the worst game he's ever witnessed in his 24 years. We've seen a ton of worse games than this.
Yeah, that's true.
It takes toll on you.
It does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, not good. Yeah, I was surprised that Wisconsin kind of stuck around. I know we're talking about Minnesota right now, but just going back to that one. And I was surprised how well Wisconsin played. And Dante Moore got hurt, and then their backup came in. Even before Dante Moore got hurt, they did not look particularly strong. It wasn't just a lose your quarterback and the game stays close type thing. It was pouring rain too, and their true freshman running back Jordan Davidson had a really good game. But
I don't know why they didn't score more. Like they should have scored more. Like I don't know, getting down the field easily and just not converting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to the Solid Verbal guys this morning, and one of those hosts, I forget if it's Ty or the other guy, is an Oregon grad, and he was just talking about how Dante Moore, like, if he doesn't, have a good half, or if he doesn't have a first few drives, he just kind of like falls apart. And you saw that in the Penn State game, you saw that in the Indiana game, you saw that a little bit in this game too, where if he gets off to a hot start, he's just like a runaway train. But if he doesn't, then he kind of becomes pretty hard to. He just doesn't produce. I'm sorry. Wisconsin's quarterback in that game though was absolute garbage. He started the game, Hunter Simmons, 1 for 12 for 12 yards, and they were somehow only down by like 7 points into the third quarter.
He's their third string too. I don't know how this keeps happening. Like Rutgers is dealing with like tackle, like they're down to like their fourth tackle. Wisconsin's down to their third quarterback because both of their other I think it was Billy Edwards and I think something O'Neal, the quarterback from San Diego State, are both out for the year. It's not good.
Yeah, can you imagine, just for our context, like imagine we were down to Sean Ashenfelder right now.
Yikes.
Be rough. I forget how to get this layout back.
Alec, I think you know. Oh, okay.
So that's kind of what happened in the Big Ten this past week.
I have one more that I wanted to touch on actually.
Shoot.
The Jonathan Smith era at Michigan State might be coming to a close sooner than we expected. It was a 31-20 game, but that score was really not indicative of how much Michigan completely set the tone against Michigan State in the rivalry game. Michigan State fans are not happy with Jonathan Smith right now. Bryce Underwood really didn't even have that good of a game, but they just controlled the game on the ground. Justice Haynes was the co-Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week at Denzel Boston, which we will certainly get to. Aiden Shiles even got benched. I mean, granted, it was the game was largely in hand at that point, but not to the point where you like bench your put in all the second stringers type out of hand. they just do not look like they have it at all. Like they are not executing at a high level in the slightest. And I mean, hey, Oregon State's open, so maybe we see as they put it in the college basketball world, a Marfo on the coaching side, where for those who don't know, Marfo is when a guy transfers up to a school usually, and then transfers back down to his old school after a year or two. Could see that with Jonathan Smith, because this pairing has not gone well at all. They're 3-5. They are 0-5 in the Big Ten. They've lost 5 straight games. They're in bad shape right now.
I saw someone say that they want Mel Tucker back. Like, that's how bad it's getting.
What is Mel Tucker up to these days?
He's probably just cashing. I don't think so. I think he's just cashing that check, to be honest.
I don't blame him. Didn't they fire him with cause, though?
Yes, I think they did.
Ooh, you might be right.
That's rough.
So Wikipedia says he hasn't done anything since getting fired by Michigan State. His LinkedIn page still says
now hiring
head football coach at Michigan State University. So I'm going to assume he's not up to much. But yeah, I mean, Rutgers
I forgot about that. Yeah, you're right.
Rutgers is lucky that they're not a part of the winless troop in the Big Ten. There's 4 winless teams left in the Big Ten, and Rutgers avoided being one of them against one of the other winless teams.
It's still crazy to see Penn State on that list, and they'll remain on that list for at least one more week.
Rutgers has scored 6, granted one less game, 6 more points than Penn State has.
Got to throw that caveat.
Yeah, Ohio State plays Penn State this upcoming weekend at the Shoe. So that would be the ultimate irony, is that they if they win this game, it's like they finally beat Ohio State in James Franklin's Atlanta Falcons games, and on the couch.
Saw that. Oh, jeez.
This dovetails nicely though into our next topic. We want to kind of talk about what we think is like the top jobs available. Does anyone have a list?
I do.
We can talk about, because I think right now, given who's open, I think it's clear who the number one is for me, and you guys can disagree. I think it's got to be LSU number one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, completely agree on that one.
I mean,
they're tier 1.
Yeah, before Brian Kelly, they had 3 straight coaches win a national title there. They've had multiple Heisman winners. Everybody in Louisiana wants to play for LSU. You don't really even have to sell the school at all. You look at all the success they've had putting guys in the NFL, especially at the skill positions, corners and wide receivers, quarterbacks. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a factory there.
That's why it's so embarrassing that Brian Kelly walked in and somehow shit his pants, I should say.
His family failed spectacularly.
Down the bayou.
Yeah.
I think when you're just a turbo asshole and you don't even try and assimilate other than speaking like a weirdo, you gotta endear yourself to people.
I think the biggest sign, the most eye-opening thing to me, like after James Franklin got fired at Penn State a couple weeks ago, there was so much outpouring of former players, analysts, heck, even writers were telling their stories about James Franklin, about how cool good of a guy he was, how much he cared, and all that. Did not see a single thing. Maybe saw one player say something like that about Brian Kelly in the wake of his firing on Saturday.
I think more hated on him after he got fired.
Yeah.
I think the next 2 on this list are pretty close, and you could kind of argue either way.
Mm-hmm. Kent State.
Yeah, it's got to be Kent State. Alec, if you were just a head coach who had an offer from Florida and Penn State, let's say the money's similar, which are you choosing and why?
It's tough. I think I would go Florida.
Okay.
There's just something about, for one, the SEC, maybe that's completely made up in my head, that's just different. But also, Florida has a ton of buy-in. They have a lot of resources. They have that national championship, pedigree. Yeah, multiple national championships, even in recent memory as well. I mean, now it seems kind of similar to Penn State, I guess, in terms of their pecking order within the conference, their resources, things like that. I just think it's a better recruiting ground, I'll say. I thought Franklin actually did a pretty good job in recruiting to Penn State. I think Florida has a higher ceiling in terms of, recruiting ground and things like that.
Another mythical win for the SEC from Alec. No, and I see. I kind of think of it this way. It depends on where my ties are. Like, do I have more ties in the Northeast? Then of course I'm going to Penn State. Do I have more ties to the Southeast? I'm going to go to Florida. I think it's almost equal because there's obvious, like Alex just said, there's obviously teams ahead of you in both conferences, and it's going to take a lot to get over the hump of those teams. It's tough though because Penn State just fired a guy that was consistently 10-2, and I know another guy that shit the bed this year, and he was not having a good season. But you have one bad season after having 100 or whatever wins it was at Penn State, and then it's like, all right, you're done. It's very hard to get over that hump. Like James Franklin saw it himself. Like they didn't have a ton of NIL, but they had enough that was like they're in that different era. Like there's like different levels of NIL. They're not at the Oregons, the Georgias, etc. They were like right below that, and that's still upper echelon. But they can't get that money to get over the hump. Now they're trying to because like they just sold their soul to the devil of the three-stripe life to get a ton of money and influx into the program, and they're going to sponsor a bunch of athletes we've already heard and all this nonsense. They also got a lot of money coming in from donors. And if they go back to the thinking is if they go back to a Paterno guy, they'll get the Paterno guys back in donating. So if they have the money coming in, if they can get that influx of cash on top of what they already have, I think Penn State's the better job, but Florida is right there. It's just, it's tough because like Bama's consistently good now. Like Georgia's top dog. And Florida hasn't been good in how long? I know they won chips when we were younger, but like,
Dan Mullen had them rolling. He just couldn't recruit worth a lick.
Over that hump, though.
Yeah,
it's the same.
I mean, they were like 2020 Alabama might be the greatest college football team of all time, and Florida had that team on the ropes in the SEC title game.
It's true. Yeah.
I mean, it's easy to forget that how Dan Mullen, his first 3 years, had a top 10 finish each one of those, 2018, 2019, 2020. And then things kind of started to fall off after COVID. But they just do not. I don't know. I think they've kind of learned the Bo Pelini lesson where like the grass isn't always greener. You hire a guy like Billy Napier who had this sparkling, resume from the group of five, and then just, clearly wasn't it. And I do think I agree with Alec that Florida is the better job. One, because of the built-in recruiting advantage. And I know that with NIL and, with the transfer portal, that's kind of become somewhat more mythical, but there's just better recruits in Florida than there are in Pennsylvania. And you've just said 10-2 for a decade isn't good enough at Penn State. 10-2 every year at Florida would be welcomed with open arms, I feel like, because that would get you a college football playoff berth. And I get why Penn State had to let James Franklin go, but I do think that, it is not, I think Penn State fans view it as like a top 5 job because they're Penn State fans. But I think the coaching market kind of views it more of like a top 20 level job. It's still a great job. It's still in the best conference. It's still it's still a blue blood. It's still, in the top tier of the Big Ten. But at the same time, like, I don't know, it's in the middle of nowhere. They don't even have a real airport. Not that plays a huge thing, but it's just like, it is kind of like a boony place in general, State College. So, I don't know.
And here's the thing with Penn State also. It's like it's still kind of a relative unknown to what kind of job it is because, I mean, Florida has had a bunch of different coaches for better or for worse. Even, since Steve Spurrier hung him up, back in, what was that, the 90s or something, or early 2000s. Penn State, on the other hand, I mean, it's still a relative unknown job because they have had 3 head coaches in 75 years. They've had 3 head coaches in 75 years. And one of those coaches, Bill O'Brien, was there for 2 years before he jumped ship for the NFL. So basically, they've had 2 head coaches in 73 years. So how do you there's still a bit of a myth, a bit of an unknown as to what the quality of the job is. Now, those 2 coaches did a ton to make it the job it is now. But in terms of like, where do you go post Franklin? I could see a similar type thing where it's like, you let go of the guy who brought you to, heights that got close to what you saw in the best of your program's days, but can the new guy get back to that, because Franklin was there for over a decade and kind of built that up from, I don't want to say nothing, because O'Brien really built them from nothing, but from the lower standard that they were at post O'Brien to where they are now, Franklin really did a very solid job in building them back up.
Well, how much allure does it have on the recruiting front in, like, say, Florida versus, because you're going to go against the Bamas, the Georgias, and this, and like kids from Florida see a Florida offer and they're like, okay, I'm probably also getting the other SEC offers. Whereas Pennsylvania kids get PSU, New Jersey kids even, they get PSU and they're like, oh shit, see ya.
I feel like if you make the right hire for Florida, you could say this for Penn State as well.
Yeah.
But I felt like Franklin was also a pretty big part of that for Penn State, I'll say, and also because he was there for a decade. Like if you get someone like Lane Kiffin, I'll say that I feel like the Florida allure is even turned up another notch. Because Kiffin is like just one of those like boisterous, outspoken college guys, and I we talk about this all the time. Whenever Rutgers goes after Florida kids, whether they're committed or not, just you have to look out for the in-state schools, because if the in-state schools come calling, it's hard to say no to them.
Yeah, no, it's tough. Expanding it out, there might be a ton. There's going to be more job openings by the time the end of the season hits. You have Steve Sarkisian, putting it out, maybe not putting it out there, but a story floated this past weekend by Diana Rossini that he's open to NFL jobs. And once the carousel starts spinning, so let's say he does leave, and that becomes immediately the top job on the market. And then
Say it with me. Texas head coach Kyle Flood, baby.
But you never know what jobs will, from the billiards balls smacking against each other open up because one guy takes this job, which opens this. It's going to be crazy. And I think there's more, it's definitely a coach's market right now where there's more big jobs open than big candidates available. Like you guys talked about, Lane Kiffin is going to be what everybody puts as like their 1A, but he can only coach at one place, and Ole Miss is going to fight like hell to keep him too. Because, it's not like he had, after Florida Atlantic, it's not like he had the most robust job market. I don't know. I'm excited to see where this spins, because there's a lot of jobs open very early. It's not even November yet, and all these jobs are currently open, which is just absurd.
Really curious. Some of those like tier 3 type jobs, like the Arkansas, Virginia Tech. I'll put Arkansas a little bit above Virginia Tech, but Arkansas, Virginia Tech. Those kinds of jobs, where do they go? I think is going to be really interesting to kind of get the whole carousel going, because the tier 1 jobs are obviously going to, get the big headlines. But I think what really gets the crazy carousel going is where those two schools go, whether it's Shane Beamer at Virginia Tech, which for what it's worth, I don't think that's going to happen. But whether Arkansas goes after someone who's currently like an ACC head coach or something like that, or a Big 12 head coach, something like that. I'm interested to see where they go. Because like you mentioned, there's only so many coaches that schools want to take these jobs. And there's a lot of guys like a Brent Key at Georgia Tech, where he's at his alma mater. Is he going to want to leave there? Shane Beamer's really built it up in South Carolina. Is he going to want to leave there? There's got to be some kind of market balance for when this carousel really heats up, where there's going to be a lot of coaches on the move, and how does it all backfill towards the bottom?
I would push back a little bit on Arkansas being above those, the next handful, because is there a worse job than those like lower middle class big SEC schools in terms of like unrealistic expectations? Like schools like Arkansas and South Carolina, Mississippi State, like the schools that have like they haven't been like failures, but they haven't had a ton of success in the NIL era. And then you have a school like Vanderbilt, who everyone in the SEC sees still as like the nerd who should be in last place, just having, high watermarks for the program in an era that it really shouldn't. So everyone thinks like if Vanderbilt can do it, we can certainly do it. And it's just, you only can win so many games when you're playing 9 conference games. And it's only going to get harder for these SEC schools, especially in that middle class, to kind of rise up. So I feel like the expectations on a school like Arkansas are just so hard to live up to, because they expect you to go 8-4, like maybe not get to the CFP, but like if you're not winning there, you're not going to last long. We've seen that time and time again.
I guess I'll say there's a lot of money there for Arkansas. So if you bring in the right hire, there's a good chance you could probably get to that watermark. Now, will the expectations change if you do? Probably, because the SEC and there's the SEC and rational decision making don't often overlap.
That's why, like,
when it comes to big money,
the NIL stuff. That's why I think it's slightly overblown, because like you still need to like have a plan and be able to execute that plan well in order to have success in the NIL era. Like, for example, you can give a meth head $1 million and send him into a Home Depot and say, okay, now you got to build a mansion. And all he does is go and buy gift cards and like try and sell that for more meth. Like, it doesn't mean because you have a lot of money, you're going to be able to have success. Like, you could still have poor valuations. You could still try and fit square pegs into round holes. Like, sure, money opens up opportunity to have success because it allows you access to higher levels of player. But I just think like you need to still know what you're doing and have a good plan. And all those SEC schools have money. Oklahoma has money. Florida has money. Auburn has money. Like, everybody has money in the SEC. It's not a differentiator the same way it would be in, like, I don't know, the ACC.
But the ACC schools also have to watch out, because like a Virginia Tech job, like it might be decent right now. Is it decent in 4 years when the ACC doesn't exist anymore?
That's a good point. It's a very good point. The stability of being in one of those top two conferences certainly is a huge selling point.
And I think that's what makes UCLA kind of so attractive as opposed to like Oklahoma State. Like, it's the fact that UCLA is in the Big Ten. They're already in there. Is the money there yet? No, not really. Not at all, actually. But the right coach, Jed Fish, UCLA, then you open up another job. It could be a crazy carousel between Florida State opening, maybe
Southern California.
Yeah.
And Fish has never been one to lay down roots and stay somewhere for a long time.
Yeah.
He's bounced around jobs forever.
His family really loved living in LA when they were coaching, I think, with the Rams and the Chargers.
There you go.
Although, one thing I'll say, I would keep a lookout for Fish to maybe Florida. I saw a tweet.
Point, Alec.
I saw a tweet that said, so how he wrote, there's a relationship between, I got to remember where I found the tweet, but there was a relationship.
Jed Fish
you
is
take
a Florida alum, and he was college roommates with Howie Roseman, who's also a Florida alum.
And I think he's still close with some of the big, whether it's the AD or some people high up there at Florida too. So maybe keep a lookout for that one.
I mean, that's 3 SEC schools already. We're going to see Auburn probably open up. We might see Kentucky open up. Half the SEC is going to have new coaches. If Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss, that opens up. South Carolina, we just talked about Beamer potentially leaving for Virginia Tech. That opens up, and it's like, holy shit. Like, this is crazy. And that's not even counting like the other schools. Like Florida State's probably going to open up. Like, this is going to be fun.
Yeah,
and that's not even counting
like Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame for LSU.
Yeah.
And that's not even counting all the group of 5 schools that are going to need head coaches after they get poached by the big Power 4 schools.
Yep.
And in addition to the ones that are already open after firing their coaches. Like, where does Kent State go from here?
Nowhere.
Who are you going to bring in other than you're going to have to bring in someone who's probably never been a head coach before, who's just desperate to get to that level. A coordinator from somewhere.
What about a defensive line coach from Rutgers who's been there for about 15 years?
I that would be a real interesting one. Yeah, I just don't know where some of these schools go. UAB, I think, was a complete failure on the administration's part because Dilfer was a complete – like, that hire didn't make sense when it happened. And then as the tenure went on, it made even less sense. So, yeah, from top to bottom, this is going to be a very enlightening – like, a sitting FCS head coach, like a pretty good sitting FCS head coach, is not going to leave for Kent State, where you're basically – it's a complete dead-end job, basically, right?
Yeah, that one's a weird one. UAB, though, we ironically, On3 has a hot board. Weird one. Skip Holtz, head coach of the Birmingham Stallions. Do these schools start going after like UFL programs and just being like, you know what, fuck it. Like, that guy's a head coach already. He knows how to run it, kind of.
Or do we see some kind of like college basketball's heading in the direction of, you know, someone like Kevin Young or Luke Locks down in Florida State, bringing in NBA guys, bringing in former NFL guys, whether it's, you know, coordinators, you know, assistant head coaches, something like a former NFL guy, because of the way the sport is moving towards the professional model of free agency, revenue sharing contracts, all that stuff. Could that be a new wave that we potentially see? I mean, we're kind of seeing it at the lower levels with some of the former players getting hired as coaches. Even Dion at Colorado, but at the very least, he was an FCS head coach before that. So I really don't know.
Yeah, I think ultimately you're seeing like teams see one approach to success and they think, oh, okay, that's how we could succeed too. Like Dion he's never coached in college before. Let's, hire the big name, have it be splashy. We forget that, Dion has this like absolute like magnetic personality. All these kids grew up, especially kids who like want to play both sides of the ball. Like he was the only guy to really have a ton of success doing it. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, oh, well, we'll just hire like, a guy who's never coached before, but he's a big name. And that's why Trent Dilfer got hired. That's why guys like Eddie George got hired. That's why Djax, Michael Vick, like all these guys who have never really spent a whole lot of time coaching. Some have had success, like Eddie George, to his credit. He's the coach at Bowling Green now. He did a great job at Tennessee State, but
wasn't Dion also like a pretty highly regarded offensive coordinator at the high school level before getting the Jackson State job?
Yeah,
I don't remember.
I think he was too, but that was mostly coaching his son,
right? And Travis Hunt,
it's high school coaching too. Like,
speaking of which, Deshaun Jackson and Michael Vick are actually facing off at Lincoln Financial Field on Thursday. So
yeah, that's this week. I forgot about that.
If you want to catch that, Delaware State against Norfolk State at the Link, so
Michael
could be
Vick,
pretty cool.
Not afraid to fire his DC. Just saying.
Interesting. And I think that's going to be another theme of this year is everyone's going to be looking for that next Curt Cignetti, which he, side note, does not exist. So there's going to be a lot of coaches that are hired who might not have otherwise gotten an opportunity because it's seen as too big of a jump or whatever. Like Casey Keeler, look how good of a job he's doing at Temple in year one. Like he was almost the same archetype where he had a ton of success at Delaware, won a national title, goes to Sam Houston State, wins a national title there. These, FCS level or Group of 5 level coaches who maybe are a bit older, maybe they're not like the 39-year-old, been around for 2 years. Like, turns out experience might mean something when you're a coach. So I think there will be some more unorthodox hires at bigger schools than in the past due to the success that Cignetti's had.
If there were to be UCLA is already open, or Oregon State or something like that, or even Oklahoma State, someone like Brett Vigen, I think it's pronounced, the head coach at Montana State. He was a North Dakota State assistant for a long time, Wyoming assistant for a while, and then got the Montana State job. He's 53-12 with 2 Big Sky championships. So I think we're going to see some of those as well, going from the FCS to lower level Power 4 / Oregon State, whatever conference they're in.
I know he's on the hot board for Oregon State. I just don't know where exactly. But Bob Chesney, I know it's a little bit different.
He's got a lot of steam. Yep, he's a Pennsylvania guy.
126 and 51 all time between D2 D1. Like, he's a pretty good coach. I mean, hell, Penn State fans are trying to talk themselves into it.
Well, because they go into their coaching search thinking they're going to hire Urban Meyer or John Gruden or Curt Cignetti, and then they're realizing very quickly like those things are not happening. So we got to start being realistic, and I think they're closer to the realistic point now than a few weeks ago. But man, can you imagine like if we've talked about this already, but Nebraska plays at Penn State later this year in November. Like, what if you're a Penn State fan who wants Matt Rule? Do you want them to win? Do you want them to lose? Like, what's your, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a no-win situation.
I don't even know, actually. That's a tough one because, like, you don't want, like, how big of a bowl game does it have to be for Matt Rule to say, like, hey, I'm going to coach the bowl?
It has to be a CFP appearance. Anything else?
Okay, yeah, that's what I figured. Which he's probably already out of, if I had to guess. What's their record? They're 5-3.
They're 6-6.
Oh, they're 6-2. Okay.
6-2, yeah. So they just have to win out.
Yeah. So you kind of want to beat them then, because you don't want to do that. You want to get them over here as quick as you can.
But at the same time, then you're the pushback amongst the naysayers are, we're gonna hire a guy who lost to us this year, who couldn't even beat this Penn State.
That's a tough one.
It's a no-win situation.
To steal a line from our friends at the Are You Screw podcast, when is Andrew Orich getting back into the Power Four?
What are we talking about? File that away.
Yeah, good thing, because I almost forgot about him.
Harvard's pretty good this year.
They're
off to a really good start.
If you look at Bill Connolly's SP Plus rankings, they are the third highest ranked FCS team in his rankings, above quite a few.
They beat up pretty good on Princeton like a couple weeks ago.
It's the same guy that got relegated twice as an assistant coach at Rutgers. I
mean, sometimes you're a better head man than you are a position coach, in fairness.
That's fair. Maybe he's just throwing duties elsewhere. Like some coaches they should step off of the play calling and be like, what? You know what? Let the OC do it. Let the DC do it. But then
you saw the glasses. You saw the glasses on Saturday, so
saw the glasses.
Maybe it's already happened. Yeah.
Anyway.
All right. Well, I'm going to call it there. We've gone off the rails quite a bit here.
We forgot one more thing.
Oh, basketball.
All right, Alec. What's the one thing we forgot?
The Big Ten weekly awards came out yesterday.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. Big Ten weekly awards came out. They had co-offensive players of the week. So you said, okay, who's KJ Duff sharing it with? Somebody else must have had a really good week. Wrong. KJ Duff was not either of those players. Justice Haynes of Michigan was one of them, and Denzel Boston was another. Denzel Boston, another receiver, think, oh, he must have had a really crazy game. 10 receptions, 151 yards. They even included his one completion for 2 yards on there, too, to maybe back up his claim a little bit more.
Great. He did throw a 12-yard touchdown, so that's probably why, but that doesn't make it any less of a robbery.
And this just continues the trend of the Big Ten and its media members totally screwing over Rutgers. Like, I tweeted this out earlier today. In 2022, Adam Corsack won the Ray Guy Award, which goes yearly to the nation's best punter. The best punter in the nation. What did he get that year in terms of Big Ten awards? He was voted by the media as the third string punter, the third team all Big Ten punter that year. So that just, in my opinion, just encapsulates the disrespect for Rutgers. It's not new, but it is consistent. So it's infuriating, but we kind of expect it. You really have to have 5 touchdowns and 700 yards if you expect to be player of the week for the Scarlet Knights, or you have to be a top 5 projected draft pick. And because Dylan and Ace were honored a lot last year, but that was because everyone knew who they were, and you didn't need to have to prove yourself like you do every other player if you're Rutgers.
I got one more thing before we sign off. Basketball begins next week, but before that, they played Rhode Island on Sunday. They ended up winning. They were up by 6 at half and ended up winning by 17. So take it for what it's worth. Rhode Island's not that good. They're last in betting odds to win the CAA. They're second to last in Bart Torvik in the CAA. I mean, 17-point win, though. It's pretty solid. So I was also told the offense has some major flaws, and it's an old-school Pikel team. And in the wise words of Troy Donovan, what was it? Rutgers will be winning games again with 58 points. So,
hey, Steve Pikel, 7-1 against Archie Miller in the last 7 years.
We're counting that one.
Also, it's pretty funny. Austin Carroll, some of you may remember from the days of old under Mike Rice, now an assistant at Rhode Island. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, his dad was an assistant there too, which is interesting.